Chapter 3 Echoes in the Dark. The silence that followed the Iron Guardian's demise was a deceptive calm, a fragile skin stretched taut over a chasm of unknowns. Kalen's breath still came in ragged bursts, the phantom heat of the crimson beam tingling in his hands. He leaned against the cool stone wall of the armory, the strange, metallic crossbow resting across his knees. Its weight was a solid, unnerving comfort.
Well, Alara said, breaking the quiet. Her voice was steady now, the scholar's curiosity having thoroughly vanquished the mage's fear.
She was meticulously arranging their spoils on a flat-topped weapon rack. 6 of these, restorative vials. And this ebon cube. She held up one of the cylinders. It was a seamless tube of a glass-like material, filled with a fluid that swirled with faint, pearlescent motes. A formidable-looking needle, sheathed in a soft, transparent cap, formed its tip.
The craftsmanship is beyond anything I've seen. Not dwarven, certainly not elven. There are no seams, no signs of forging or glassblowing.
Can you tell what's in it? Kalen asked, his gaze fixed on the device. His own wounds from their journey to the keep ached with a dull throb.
I can sense a faint aura of restorative magic, but it's inert. Dormant, she mused. I suspect it requires direct application. An injection, perhaps? A rather barbaric method of healing, if you ask me.
If it closes a wound, I don't care if it's administered by a goblin shaman or a metal spike, Kalen countered, ever the pragmatist.
He picked up the black cube. It was surprisingly heavy, its surface smooth and cool, absorbing the torchlight without reflection. A low, almost imperceptible hum emanated from it, a vibration he could feel in the bones of his hand.
And this? What do you make of it?
A power source, Alara stated with conviction, tapping the similar, now drained cube they had found in the first chest. Like a soul gem, but one that holds raw energy, not a spirit. The automaton was powered by a crystal, but these weapons, they seem to drink from these stones.
An idea sparked in Kalen's mind. He examined the crossbow. Near the stock, he found a small, recessed panel that matched the dimensions of the cube. With a grunt of effort, he slid it open, revealing an empty cavity. The original power source must have been nearly depleted. He took the fresh cube from Alara and slotted it into the opening. It clicked into place with a satisfying finality. Immediately, the weapon came to life. A thin line of crimson light traced its way from the cube's housing to the tip of the projector. The low hum intensified for a moment before settling into a steady, silent readiness. It felt more potent now, brimming with contained power.
So that's how it feeds, he murmured. 1 stone, 1 charge.
A finite resource, Alara noted, her brow furrowed. We must be judicious in its use. My own magic, at least, replenishes with rest and focus.
I'll try to remember that when the next metal monstrosity is charging at us, Kalen said dryly. He secured the spent cube in his satchel. It felt too important to discard and rose to his feet.
There's no use waiting for its kin to come looking. We follow the passage it came from. We find the heart of this place.
Alara gathered the healing cylinders and her diagnostic spoon, packing them away with a care that bordered on reverence. For once, she did not complain about the dust or the grim surroundings. The allure of discovery was a far more potent force than her distaste for grime. They left the armory, stepping into the corridor that had birthed their mechanical foe. The change in architecture was immediate and striking. The rough-hewn, cobbled stone of the keep's underbelly transitioned seamlessly into walls of the same matte gray metal as the automaton. The surfaces were smooth, cool to the touch, and etched with impossibly fine geometric lines that pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence, casting the passage in an ethereal twilight. The air grew still and cold, carrying a clean, sharp scent like the air after a lightning strike. The low growl returned, but this time it was different. It was not a single, resonant threat but a chorus of smaller, sharper noises. A chittering, scraping sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, from vents in the ceiling, from grills along the floor. It was the sound of an infestation.
They know we're here, Alara whispered, holding her glowing staff aloft. Its warm, white light seemed feeble against the cold, blue-tinged glow of the walls.
Good, Kalen said, his grip tightening on the lightcaster. Let them come.
The corridor opened into a vast chamber, so large their torchlight could not find its ceiling. A colossal chasm, its depths lost to an absolute, silent blackness, split the room in two. Spanning the gulf was a narrow walkway, perhaps 5 feet across, made not of stone or metal, but of solid, shimmering light. It cast a steady, unwavering glow into the abyss below, revealing nothing. And then they saw them. Pouring from openings in the far wall were dozens of smaller creatures. They were a hideous fusion of insect and machine, each the size of a large hound. Their bodies were segmented plates of dark metal, moving on 6 spindly, razor-tipped legs that skittered across the floor with unnerving speed. Where a head should have been, a single, glowing red sensor swiveled menacingly. They were lesser versions of the Guardian, a swarm of what Kalen could only think of as metal scuttlers. The predatory growl rose to a cacophony of metallic shrieks as the pack surged towards the bridge of light.
Stay behind me, Kalen ordered, raising the lightcaster. He sighted on the lead scuttler and pressed the stud.
The silent, crimson beam lanced across the chasm. It struck the creature dead center, melting a fist-sized hole clean through its chassis. It convulsed, legs twitching, and then collapsed in a shower of sparks. But where one fell, 3 more scrambled over its corpse.
They are too many. Alara cried out. Her staff flared. Ventus impetus, asterisk.
A powerful, concentrated gust of wind slammed into the front ranks of the scuttlers as they set foot upon the light bridge. Several were thrown off balance, their spidery legs scrabbling for purchase on the smooth, ethereal surface before they toppled over the edge, disappearing into the blackness without a sound. It bought them a moment. Kalen fired again, the beam searing through another scuttler. But he could feel the weapon growing warm in his hands. He knew instinctively that this was not a weapon for sustained battle. Each shot was a deliberate, draining expenditure of power. They ventured onto the bridge, the solid light feeling unnervingly like solid ground beneath their boots. Halfway across, with scuttlers closing in from the far side, Alara suddenly stopped.
Wait, she hissed, her eyes scanning the walls of the cavern. The intricate patterns of light were not random. They pulsed in a steady, repeating sequence. Her gaze dropped to the floor panels on their side of the chasm, then to the scuttlers. Kalen, look. They are avoiding certain sections of the bridge.
He glanced down. It was true. The swarm moved in a strange, weaving pattern, leaving specific, unmarked portions of the luminous walkway untouched. As if to prove her point, one of the creatures, shoved from behind by the press, stumbled onto one of these vacant spots. Instantly, the section of the bridge beneath it flickered and vanished. The scuttler let out a piercing electronic screech as it plunged into the abyss. A second later, the light reformed.
A trap, Kalen breathed. A pathway puzzle.
A security measure, Alara corrected, her mind racing. She fumbled in her satchel and produced the spoon-shaped artifact. This thing reads the inner workings of their technology. Perhaps it can read this bridge.
She held it up, pointing its crystal tip at the walkway ahead. Kalen stood guard, his back to hers, firing another carefully aimed beam that vaporized a scuttle bold enough to charge them. Through the tool's crystal, Alara's world transformed. A faint, azure overlay appeared on the bridge, invisible to Kalen's naked eye. It highlighted a safe, winding path across the treacherous expanse. The patterns the scuttlers followed were not instinct, but a response to a signal she could now perceive.
I have the path, she exclaimed, a thrill of intellectual triumph in her voice. Follow my steps. Exactly.
Just tell me where to step, Alara. Kalen grunted, firing again. The red sensor of another scuttler went dark.
2 steps forward, then 1 to your left. The large panel, not the small one, she commanded, moving with a newfound confidence. This isn't some goblin pitfall, Kaelin, it's a security matrix woven from light and logic. Now, right foot forward, past the seam.
He followed without question, his trust absolute. He was the sword, she was the guide. He kept the tide of clattering metal at bay while she navigated their salvation. They moved in a strange, syncopated dance across the glowing expanse. A step, a pause, the silent flash of a crimson beam, another step. Twice more, scuttlers strayed from the path and plummeted into the void, their own defenses turned against them. Finally, their boots hit solid, metallic ground on the far side of the chasm. Kaelin immediately turned and unleashed one last, sweeping beam across the bridge's entrance, forcing the remaining creatures to recoil in a shower of molten metal. They had made it. Winded and tense, they found themselves in a smaller, crescent-shaped room. The far wall was not metal, but a single, colossal pane of the same unbreakable green glass as Ilara's treasured shard. It was a window, an observation deck. It overlooked a cavern of impossible scale. Their torches were redundant here. The vast space was lit by the soft glow of countless geometric patterns on the walls and by the monolithic structure that dominated its center. It was a vessel, Kaelin realized with a jolt, that had nothing to do with the battle. A ship, long and sleek and utterly alien, lay dormant in a massive docking cradle. Its hull was the same dark, non-reflective material as the energy cube, and it was vast enough to house a small city. And it was swarming. Thousands upon thousands of the metal scuttlers crawled over its silent hull, their red sensor lights a tide of malevolent embers in the gloom. The ceaseless, chittering growl that had haunted them was the collective hum of this mechanical horde. They weren't hunting Kaelin and Ilara. They were tending to something. Or guarding it. Kaelin checked the light caster. The crimson line that indicated its power was visibly shorter. He looked at the one spare energy cube in his pouch, then at the army of machines below. It was like having a single bucket of water to fight a forest fire. Ilara stood beside him, her face pressed close to the glass, her reflection a pale ghost against the immense darkness. The scholar in her was warring with the primal fear in her heart. All her studies of the ancients, all the myths of godlike beings who walked the stars, had been abstract theories. This was real. This was the tomb, or the workshop, of the gods themselves.
Kaelin, she whispered, her voice filled with a terrifying awe. This isn't a keep's dungeon. This is a tomb. A city built to house the dead.
He did not answer. His gaze was fixed on the silent, slumbering ship. The Iron Guardian was a sentry. The scuttlers were caretakers. They had just breached the outer defenses of a fortress that had slept for 10,000 years. And from the sheer scale of it all, he knew with chilling certainty that the true guardians had not yet awakened.